Hello and welcome to another episode of Conversations about Language Teaching. This is our first one after a little summer break, and so I'm happy to be back. I am Dr. Diane Neubauer. My pronouns are she, her, and I am again joined by.
Dr. Reed Riggs, pronouns are he, him. Now, as a note, we're recording this during our summer break and then releasing at the start of the school year. And so these are sort of current summer thoughts, and that's going to be relevant to the episode. Yeah.
Yes. And so this time, Reed is going to be leading the episode because he's got a particular thing he's working on this summer
Mhm.
and thinking through vertical alignment, as it sometimes gets called. And we'll have to define that as
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
typically do, and also address some of the things that we think are misconceptions about this and maybe some things that you could take away for your own application. Um,
Yeah.
in thinking through how do you align with other teachers across a full range of grade levels or
Yeah.
program years.
Yeah. Yeah. First, do you have any mentions?
Oh, I don't think I have any mentions.
Okay. Great.
I kind of wanted a little shout out to my cat, Holly.
There you go.
There we go. She's been
Yep.
a joy.
That's
So
great. Hi, Holly.
we did mention her buttons, didn't we?
Yeah.
Then I do have a little update.
Mm.
We had a little hiatus from them. I was traveling some and away from her, and so several weeks she didn't have her buttons with me practicing. But since I have gotten back together with Holly and she's been with me, we're back in the habit of using buttons. She is. For the first time, she actually took me from the kitchen into the room where the buttons were and walked me over to the buttons and pushed the button for the
Oh.
TREAT.
Uh-huh.
I'm spelling it because if I say it right now, she's right near me and she will hear it
Yeah.
and know what I mean. So she's figuring it out. She's not quite at the point where she knows, like, I'd really like to play. Let me go over there and hit that one button.
Mm.
Um, Not quite there, but she definitely knows that that is a button and what it does when I push it. So
Mm.
she's getting the hang of it. I've consulted people who do this training with cats and dogs, and they think, you had a little gap it sounds like she's doing just fine. She's going to get it, and continue to do training each day. And by training, I mean I get a little treat stick, and then push the button and give her a little squirt of it, and then push the button again and a little extra squirt. And
Mm.
then I always try to press the other two buttons for play and for pets, as often as possible as I do that or initiate that with her. So she definitely knows what those three words mean,
Yeah.
and a few other words too that I just use verbally with her that might be the next button to add.
Nice. Cool. All
Yeah,
right. Go Holly. Go you.
yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So let's start this off with the definition of vertical alignment. I'll be using the term vertical articulation interchangeably here. I have two definitions that I found. Um, this started for me with prompting from our dean a year ago at the beginning of this last school year that said, get together with your subject area. In the IB, we call them subject areas, and instead of departments, and work on vertical alignment. And it was pretty generally given like that. And so I, as subject area lead, Sal, I told my French teachers, use this time to meet together and talk about vertical alignment. And same with Japanese. And the Japanese teacher said, we meet all the time. We're good. And I said, okay, good. And then I came up with some ideas. I made little slides that I met with the middle school Chinese teacher, and we talked about some things. And she said, "Oh, why don't we do this or that?" And I said, "Okay." One of them was the students. They're going to need to write the date in Chinese in my class, and so in middle school they have a sign out sheet to use the bathroom because there was some tomfoolery going around in the bathroom with
Hmm.
messing it up as middle school boys. It's the boys.
Oh,
It's
that's
just the boys.
classic.
Yeah, classic
Yeah.
middle school boys.
Yes.
So all middle schoolers needed to sign out, and so I said, "Hey, can I?" So I asked the middle school dean of students, "Can I have access to your document?" I made a copy, replaced the place where they sign out the date with the Chinese date format with Chinese characters,
Ah,
printed those, and gave them to the middle school teacher, and said, "Every time they sign out for the bathroom, I want them to, put this in your little clipboard." And
nice.
so when I checked, and at first she was making them write the numbers in Chinese characters, And
Oh,
I didn't say, hey, you don't have to do that because they don't have to do that for me. And it's not normally, usually use Arabic
yeah,
numerals.
exactly
It's
for
the
that.
word day, the word month, the word year that's in Chinese characters, but the numbers are Arabic numerals. So she started with that, but then as she sort of gave up, just because, as a teacher, you can't keep on everything, the kids were writing Arabic numerals. And I thought that's exactly what I was hoping for. Because what I
Yeah.
was seeing in my grade levels, 9 through 12, is the students being surprised about how to write the date. And the teacher was saying, oh, I
Hmm.
taught them that. They just don't pay attention. They don't study. And I was like, okay, let's try to integrate it so it's more authentic in its usage for the students' experience and more regular for them, not just taught once. So that's about the extent of it. Then and some of the articulation documents I was looking at were just lists of either grammar or like names of categories of vocabs. For example, colors. They're going to learn the color words. Clothing. They're going to learn the clothing words. And in the
Mm.
Japanese section, Japanese often gets into what we call pragmatics in linguistics. So it's learning how to politely decline an invitation, learning how to politely accept something, and then maybe some grammar patterns that go with that. So at the time, I just thought, I don't know what else to do here, and I'm going to let this go. Now, at the end of
Hmm.
the year, I started to get some ideas, and one thing that clicked for me was vertical articulation really should be about what are you preparing them to do in the next year or even semester, but usually it means like the next year. I was talking with the art teacher who's the head of her department, and she said we have our DP exams, the diploma program exams. So in IB schools, your junior and senior year are the equivalent, kind of like an AP class, but it's 2 years and it's a lot more
Hmm.
content. And so they take a test at the end, kind of like AP, but in the IB system. And she said we go over those scores together and we look at what art skills the kids are missing. And then we talk about middle school through high school. When can we fit in teaching of whatever gaps are missing? And I thought, okay, I need to sort of translate that over, so to speak, to languages. It's not going to be about like pointillism and sketching and shading with a colored pencil as you do in art. Um, it's going to be other stuff. I got to figure out what that is. So I have for today what I currently have in mind that I'm gonna. I think what was going on with vertical articulation with my teachers is no one was guiding them.
Hmm.
No one was saying, here are examples you could go from, not to say, here's a guide, you must follow it, but here are some examples to see
Right.
what you find relevant to you.
Yeah.
It was literally nothing. I was providing nothing. Dean was providing nothing. No one was providing anything. And we were just saying, hey, just go talk about vertical alignment. Like no one was saying
Yeah.
what it meant. No one was
Nobody
giving a
even defined it.
definition. Nope,
Yes.
nothing. So
Yeah.
this is what
And
this
so,
is. Yeah.
yeah. And so what happens, I think, in this kind of setting where people don't make clear, here's the scope that we're talking about, here's some examples so that it fleshes
Yeah.
it out in different ways.
Yep.
But like then what happens is people go back to their default mindset about
Yeah.
language teaching and learning,
Sure.
which is so often like, well, textbook controlled. So,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so I need a sequence of vocabulary lists.
Yeah.
And now you do this one. And then this other class level, they'll do that list. And then they'll
Yeah.
have this grammar point in this year, and then we'll never do it again
That's right.
because now
That's
that's
right.
been done. And so we're vertically aligned. You did that your year, I do this my year. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it's like this kind of, it's basically like if you took a table of contents of a textbook, yeah,
Yep.
that's
It is. Yeah.
not what we mean by vertical alignment
So I'm going to read these two
in this
definitions.
podcast.
Sure. Yeah. And my notion that just came to me was, wait, if it's about preparation for what's next, then how could a list of vocabulary words where you're saying, well, we taught these color words here, so that's done. And we'll teach these animal words here, and that's done. We'll teach these family words here, and that's done. How could that fit the definition of preparing them for what's next?
Right.
Now,
It's not,
if you're saying we need to say the colors of the animals, that should be
then, yeah,
listed then. That would show
yeah,
actual alignment, but that's
yeah,
usually not
that's
what we're showing.
spiraling. Yeah.
Sure. Yep. So I'm going to read these two definitions here. This first one is from Acquah. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Acquah and Owusu, 2021. The article is called "Vertical Articulation and Content Relevance of the Senior High School Economics Curriculum: Case of Ghana" in the Asian Journal of Education and Training,
Hmm.
page 170. So this here, the vertical
And we'll link
articulation,
this.
we'll link it. The interconnectedness of concepts within a curriculum, and they cite Kannan 2016. There is vertical articulation when the lessons to be taken in a subject are related to those occurring later in the curriculum sequence, implying the organization of content according to the sequence and continuity of learning within a given subject domain. And then a blog from Executive Education. I tried to find Edutopia, and Edutopia didn't have one, but this is just an educator blog.
Yeah, Edutopia has a lot of stuff
They
usually.
do, but this it was surprise. I was surprised this
Interesting.
was missing. Yeah, I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So a different blog, not as notable, but that's okay. I like this definition, and it matches. By creating a cohesive learning experience, vertical articulation enables students to build upon their knowledge and skills as they move from one grade level to the next. When educators from the same department or content area collaborate to implement vertical articulation, they're able to identify and address any gaps or inconsistencies in the curriculum. So
Yeah.
those match what my intuition was saying
Yeah.
should be. These
And
are yeah.
I have a thought about something that reminds me of because I think it
Hmm.
aligns well with that way of defining things.
Yeah.
I was very impressed many years back with the middle school English language teachers. Like they were the English language arts kind of style
Hmm.
of English language teaching,
Yeah.
not
Language arts, yeah.
second language, but
No.
yeah, language arts. And so those English teachers at the middle school level had a very nice way of thinking about going from fifth grade through eighth grade,
Hmm.
and they had a they pointed it out, like we were all sharing our department goals and kind of what we were doing and what was happening at different grade levels,
Hmm.
and they were saying, in fifth grade we're introducing XYZ concepts,
Yeah.
but we don't expect them to master that.
That's
We
right.
expect that this is an introduction.
Yeah.
We're getting their feet wet in it, and we expect this kind of ability to use it. Like they had a
Yeah.
project or
Yeah.
something that they could point to that said,
Mhm.
this is where we're going to see students do something with it.
Yeah.
And then in sixth grade, they went a little deeper. They revisited that concept. I wish I
Yeah.
could remember the specific
Sure.
concepts, but some were related to English language, linguistics, grammar stuff. Some were related to literature and
Hmm. Hmm.
literature analysis and understanding. Some were related to writing and writing conventions, but all of those, and they all were included in every year, those
Hmm.
different key
Hmm.
areas of skills
Yeah.
for English language arts.
Yep.
And then they had it spiraled up. So the
Yeah.
same themes were throughout,
Hmm.
and the depth of knowledge and the like the complexity of the application was
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time I really saw that, and it got me thinking about how I treated my own students. Like, do I
Yeah.
have a mindset where
Yeah.
they don't have to master it in the first year that we're doing this with them and
That's right.
teaching
Yeah.
Chinese,
Yeah.
but they're going to build and grow.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Hmm.
maybe I need to be intentionally thinking like, I
Yeah.
want this kind of thing to happen, but I just want to introduce it now.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I revisit it again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah.
think so we'll get to these points. I think that if you're defining your articulation, if what you're looking at is language, words, and grammar, then you're kind of setting yourself up for you're painting yourself into a corner where you're going to get yourself stuck and it's really hard to get out of because you're saying, well, I have this long list of words and I've covered them in each year.
Yeah.
Where do I go from there? That doesn't lead to communication. I think it's better to start from a communication perspective,
Yep.
which is going to be something I think can-do statements are fine. I have
Yeah.
something
Those can,
slightly different, but I think
yeah.
that's better than a list of words. I shared an idea with you over some chat messages recently that let's say it's let's say it's environmental issues and specifically recycling, like recycling bottles and cans, newspapers, and things like that. I just recently thought of a metaphor for this, and I might use this with my teachers to make it visualizable. Do you know those clothes hangers that's like for socks? It's a wheel, and you can hang it
Oh,
up on a
yeah.
clothesline, but it's
Oh,
got
I think of
little
it. Yeah.
clothespins coming down from it, and then you can put
Yeah.
socks on each
Yeah.
clothespin. Okay,
Yeah. It feels like a distinctly Chinese laundry system to me
okay,
because that's
okay.
where I first saw them. And I bought
Yeah.
one to bring back to the States, and I still have it. So,
Okay.
yes,
All right. Well, okay, maybe the
I love
metaphor won't be
those.
so relatable then, but imagine that this thing exists. And basically
Well, maybe we'll find a
a
photo of this
picture.
kind
Let's
of
get a
thing, and
picture
we'll
of it.
put it
Yeah.
into show
Yeah.
notes.
So, as a metaphor for your curriculum, I think what I like about this is I can go to the teachers and say, keep what you got, keep doing what you're doing, but let's look at it not in terms of language, not in terms of word lists, but in terms of the topic for that unit. It could be a theme. You can call it a theme or topic. I don't really care what you call it here, but let's say you have a family unit. It's really common for language teachers to be like, I'm going to teach the family words. Okay. At its most linguistic way of looking at it, okay, it's a list of family words. But family, let's treat it as family, the concept of family that we're going to use the language to talk about. You can imagine that the time you have, like the class hours or how many total minutes, however you want to count the time, how many days of this lesson, reserve one of your little clips that would, the real thing would be for socks, but in this metaphor, it's for a little subtopic. In your family unit, can you have a little chat about how recycling happens in the family? Like, does dad throw out the bottles and cans, or does dad sort the plastic from the glass? Does mom sort it? Do the kids sort it? So now you're still talking about family, and you can still,
Hmm.
if vocabulary has been your focus, like we're just trying to teach the family member names, and that's it. Okay, fine, you can keep doing that. But if you really want to look at it like as a list of words like that, you can still do that. But we can also fit in this more communicative thing where now you could, if you want to say you're practicing those family words, great, we're practicing those family words, but it's on this subtopic of recycling. So now, does mom take out the recycling bin? Does dad take out? You can have pictures of recycling related stuff, but now they're exposed to recycling
Right.
because we need
Right.
that on the DP exams. The DP exams have a lot about environmental issues, and often recycling is on there, and it doesn't ever come up. I don't know of any middle school teachers bringing up recycling, and
Yeah.
so where could it fit? I think that this little metaphor of the your unit topic as this kind of wheel with possible subtopics to attach onto it, you could
Yeah.
fit recycling in there. Then when we've got school life might be something they do in the next year. Can you fit recycling into school life? Do we have recycling in our school? Kind of in some buildings, yes. Great. Do the students do it? Do the teachers do it? Does the principal recycle?
Yeah.
So you can,
Where do you take it? How often?
yeah, where does it
Yeah.
go? Does the city pick it up? So that way, now they've seen recycling a couple times. When they come up to the DP in 11th grade, I could do something a little more serious of like government government policy as a general theme or topic, but then within that, I could have recycling come up. So, what are some government policies around recycling? Now, the kids have had several years of exposure where, like you said, we're
Yeah.
not trying to master it in each year. But
Right.
or if it is mastery, it's about mastery of something very tiny, like something very manageable within their grade level. And it really shouldn't be linguistic mastery. It should be something more like they can talk about the topic, but they're not necessarily required to use specific grammar structures or specific words. I
Hmm.
think where a language expectation could meet halfway here is about key terms. So
Yeah.
the word recycle would be a key term here. So can we keep using the word recycle a lot? Maybe it's so important to talk about this topic, to communicate about this topic that maybe that one word really is super important and like it's a key term.
Yeah.
Um, then maybe that's as far as like a language requirement should go. But other than that, like I don't think vocabulary. I mean, we definitely should not be saying they already learned the word recycle in sixth grade. Therefore, we need new
Yeah.
vocab. We need only new words to teach. No, they learned it in sixth grade so we can use it in seventh grade. We kept
Right.
using it in seventh grade so we can use it in eighth grade. Or maybe they skip a year and they don't have recycling as a subtopic in any part of their eighth grade. Maybe, but however it wants to come up, it's like I think
Yeah.
that you can keep it coming up
That's
in different topics.
that's
Yeah,
nice. I think the thing that I think is clever about that with the like the sock drying rack kind
yeah,
of thing,
yeah.
like
The
it's
wheel.
not it's not asking for an entirely new way of thinking about language teaching and themes for
Hmm.
people who aren't able to go there yet.
It would be too
Like so,
much.
okay,
Yeah,
so yeah, but you've found a way that they can add a little piece in that is doing this kind of vertical articulation stuff that is necessary with the IB system.
yeah,
I was thinking as you were talking, like I think we should name this one vertical articulation in an IB school,
sure.
like because it's you've got this test that does so much push
Yeah.
towards every other level from really it should be affecting kindergarten on, or you're going to have kids getting up to the high school level where they're just about to take the test and they're just floored by
Yeah.
how much is
Hmm.
required on that exam,
Hmm. Hmm.
including in Chinese that it's in handwriting still, I
Yeah.
think, right? Like
So the
good
writing
night.
test is in handwriting. Here's a gripe that I have. The listening exam requires reading all the test prompts in Chinese characters and some
Oh.
writing of words that are not anywhere to be found on a page. You have to hear it and then write it out.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh,
on the
that is not a
listening
listening
exam,
test.
it's something to, yeah, someone needs to think
Yeah,
about this. Yeah.
that is a seriously, that's like
Uh,
in assessment
yeah.
literature, like
Yeah.
that's called not having validity. Like you call it a
Right.
listening test, but you're
Right.
testing their handwritten
Yeah.
recall of characters, not
Yeah.
just listening. So it's
Right.
conflating the outcome of
The
what you're testing.
the argument that so I got to meet the previous teacher that I replaced at my school. We had a big lunch sending off our Japanese teacher of 30 years at our school. She was there before it was an IB
Wow.
school, 30 years. And she's great. She's well loved for good reason. But I got to meet the previous teacher there at this lunch we went
Yeah.
on. And I brought that up, and she said, well, the IB exam is expecting them at this level to be able to write as well. And I said, if it was a holistic exam, that would make sense, but they've split it into listening, speaking, reading, and writing as separate exams.
Right.
So if you're going to do
Yeah.
that, then what are you saying about listening if it's the
Yeah.
reading and writing that got in the way of showing their ability to
They're
listen?
listening.
So
Right.
it's a
Right.
different issue.
Very much.
AP, I do think this can be generalized beyond IB schools because a lot of schools do have AP exams,
Mm-hmm.
and those can also be looked at and then backward designed. I don't think
Right.
anything about, so another, in these readings I did to get these definitions, there's also mention of um, other stuff going on that isn't for vertical alignment. Like every grade level
Mm-hmm.
should have whatever's appropriate for that grade level. I was thinking about the Mr. Bluebird is a puppet that my daughter's PK teacher, pre kindergarten for the 3-year-old. They start in 3 years old. She uses a puppet. So I looked it up. There are
Mm-hmm.
blogs about teachers using puppets to teach literacy. The puppet
Yeah.
can do silly things like say the word slower, sound it out, spell it out. You can interact with the puppet so you get more general repetition or more focus on form by like explaining to the puppet who looks confused about like what's going on with that word there. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
That's age appropriate. And to say, oh, they're not going to need puppets in fifth grade, therefore cut it out. That
Yeah.
that should not
It just
be,
sounds silly.
yeah. So
But
that
it
should,
is,
yeah,
yeah, the way that I think it often will happen in language teaching, though, like we somehow turn off the usual kind of logic
yeah,
that we would apply in other aspects of life.
sure,
And then like, yeah, so we have to say it. We have to say
yeah,
like, no, it's okay that they're doing something different here, but it's
yeah.
still able to build
Yep.
for
The
the
part of
future.
it, yeah. So maybe a simplistic way of thinking of it is that part of what they're doing during that school year is preparing them for the next school year. But maybe a lot of the rest of it is just whatever is appropriate for that grade level. Like not everything
Yeah.
needs to be just preparation for the next year level.
Right.
Another thing that goes too far is I think when teachers say they're going to need this when they go to the country.
Hmm.
I have lots of thoughts about that. I think that most of our students will never go to the country. We got to think about our goals a little differently.
Yeah.
And
Well,
some of it can be
and
preparation, but you shouldn't be only teaching toward going to another country.
yeah. And I just to call attention to that idea of the country. Like,
Sure.
well,
Yeah.
what about my next door neighbor who moved here from China? What about,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's sometimes that kind of mindset trickles in too. Like, well, those that's another place and
Yeah. Yeah.
another time. And yeah, I've
Yeah.
even heard people say like they think that that's motivating for students to think about their futures. I've taught 10-year-olds and 14-year-olds, and I think more than ever, perhaps, they are thinking of the immediate
Yeah.
and their own current life.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they do think and plan for the future too. And
Uh-huh.
that can be a little motivator on occasion. But if that's the whole appeal,
Yeah.
I think we need to think about what am I getting them to do right now that feels
Yeah.
relevant to them. So,
So a lot of the IB exams will have reading texts and audio texts that are set in, for Chinese, are set in Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, mainland China. And I think the IB is all about international mindedness.
Hmm.
And so I personally think of this as helping them understand their neighbor here. So,
Yeah.
like their middle school teacher, born and raised in Singapore. And so I bring her up a lot when we look at Singapore stuff, where I say, "Oh yeah, Pam
Yeah.
Washer, this was her childhood. Like these are things that happened there. Or her family's still there, and so this things her family's going through." But I make the focus about here, like as close to the students' lives as possible, or
Yeah.
an actual teacher that they've had that's still at their school that they still will run into, and then about that teacher's background. So I'm making the foreign thing relevant to here,
Right.
as opposed to pretending we're going to send them all off to Singapore, like they're all going to go to
Right.
Singapore. It's to me, it's more realistic
Right. Right.
and
Yeah.
probably more
You're
motivating.
building a bridge from what they know and they have experienced so far
Yeah,
towards another step in another intercultural kind of a setting. And I think that
yeah,
makes a
yeah,
lot of sense.
yeah. Um, so okay, I want to go through three areas that I think makes sense for my context that I do think could be more general for other people as well. Um, so our grading is based on listening, speaking, reading, and writing in the middle school, and then we've chosen to make our grades based on those four skills as well in the high school. The middle school, we have
Hmm.
no option. The IB learning management system where the grades get entered. For the middle school, it's just set. Oh, sorry, not middle school, middle year program. So it's grades 6 through 10.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Grades 6 through 10. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing are just these little click buttons. You just click on a scale from 1 to 8, how they're performing overall. So I think those make sense to define our skills to be vertically aligned. And then I've come up with listening sub skills, and this is a work in progress. I think there's a lot more that could be said, but this is what I've seen in our students having needs in. So one is that they need to, a lot of it's meaning focused. Like a lot of students are just trying to check boxes and get the grade.
Hmm.
And we need to have positive experiences with listening where they are listening for meaning. They're trying to get either gist or key details or follow the story, but while listening. And that means that they need to have a lot of listening experiences in the classroom. I think activities that are really easy to pass on to teachers are listen and do type activities. We have a different episode on that. But
Hmm.
the way I'm going to, because I'm trying to find quick and easy ways for my teachers to buy in, that they'll get the
Right.
most highest chance of buy-in at a little meeting. Like we're not doing a whole training. It's just at a small meeting. If I'm like, we got to train them in listening, and they're like, how do we do that? Here's a quick thing for you.
Yeah.
So listen and point. So the teacher calls out something, they point to a picture. Listen and pose. So they hear some kind of command. It's very similar to what TPR usually is.
Yeah.
It could be any kind of pose. Pose like a horse. Pose like a dolphin. Listen and show. Say hold up a card maybe. And then longer listening would be things like listen to the teacher describe a picture for a whole minute. Listen to the teacher describe or tell a whole story for a whole minute. The things that I call real talk with my pictures from my
Hmm.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to point out, like, because you're doing this vertical alignment, not just to check a box for your administrators, you're
Mm-mm.
actually wanting to use it with the outcomes of the students' language proficiency in mind.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
commendable.
Yeah.
It's
It's
fortunate that you have that opportunity
yeah.
rather than are just, required to check a box. And like you're
The
wanting to make it actually do something. And I think
Yeah. We want
that's not always the way,
success.
yeah,
We
vertical
want
alignment gets done.
success. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
success can be defined really generally in terms of proficiency in general. It could also be defined in terms of that big DP exam, which is very hard. And
Yeah.
it's designed as best as it can be to be, practical to grade. The listening and reading exams are multiple choice. There's some little write-in sections, but it's meant to be really quick to grade. The writing is a full-on, you have to write in a format like a blog or a email, and it has to be to the audience that's specified in the prompt. Those are more involved. And the
Hmm.
speaking exam is a whole conversation for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think either way, whether we just say proficiency in general or it's for these exams, they're pretty similar, I think, to align to. Um, Ultimately, we want our students to come out of their K-12 education with some proficiency in the language and not just having like gotten the grades and moved on.
Right.
Which the students by default we see them doing. This is the other thing is that this is based on I wrote this based on what I've seen the students doing for me and what I've heard teachers complaining about in other students. So this is our context.
Yeah.
If this was a summer camp, like I used to work, you and I have worked in Star Talk programs, those students select to be there and are very motivated. They don't need grades to motivate them. There are no grades to distract them, like, oh, let me just get this done. They're there because they want to spend the whole summer focused on, or a couple weeks in the summer focused on the proficiency. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't have this kind of plan in that kind of context. This is really just my specific
Right.
context. Um, okay, so
Yeah,
listening,
because
speaking, reading, and writing.
you're problem solving on multiple levels. You're thinking about the language proficiency development of the students, but you're also thinking a lot about the motivation of students and
Yes.
the pitfalls to it. And
Yep.
then also thinking about the teachers that you're
Yeah.
working with and who has
Yeah.
to actually carry this out and what kinds of supports do they need? What sorts of steps would they take?
Yeah.
And how can you actually make it happen? So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
also these teachers, they see me as the new guy. And so they've
Yeah.
been there for 20 years, 25 years, no longer 30 years, but we did for these last couple of years. So a lot of them were saying like, we've been doing this for so long. Like, why would you even check what we're doing? Like, what's going on here? Um,
Hmm.
okay, so that's vertical skills alignment. And then I have vertical content alignment. And I worked in Claude. I said, I want to get our teacher, I gave the situation, I want our teachers to talk about like school life, all these topics that come up on the DP exam, but to be able to prepare the students for those topics. And the first thing I said is this complete? Am I missing any topics? And it said, actually, you're missing identities and technology as well. And so I was like, great. So then it just gave me this awesome looking little grid that's got and it goes MYP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for identities, it's got family, physical description, personal traits. MYP 2, that's going to be seventh grade. Friendships, values, hobbies. MYP 3, cultural identity, heritage, traditions, what shapes me. MYP 4, gender, generation, belonging, identity, conflict, and pressures. MYP 5, cultural, hybridity, diaspora, personal values. I don't want to pass
Yeah.
this on to my
Wow.
teachers and say cover all this. And in fact,
Yeah.
I made a
That's what I was
note.
just thinking.
No,
Like
absolutely
that,
not.
those are not vocabulary
No.
lists that we're talking about.
Well, that's true, but also this is way more than any program should take on. And so I left a note that said, looking below, is there any one area of content that we are not already covering? And if they come back and say we're not covering like 80% of this, great. Don't try to take on like this whole thing. This is where I got the environmental one from. So it said MYP 1, sorting trash at home, names of recyclable materials. MYP 2, school recycling programs, what we throw away and why. MYP 3, local pollution sources, comparing habits across cultures. MYP 4, urban versus rural environmental policy, causes and statistics. MYP 5, I probably wouldn't spread it out this quickly either. I would say like, can you maybe choose the first two and spread that over a couple years? And then when I get into DP, they might not even see it for a couple years. When I get into DP, I'll get into like climate action debates and we'll make it more complex then. But we can because it'll be a somewhat familiar topic.
Right.
So I want this to be more of a choice board and not like a list of things that they have to do. There's way too much in here. Now, over many years, we might gradually keep adding things in where after like 5 years, the teacher's like, over time, we've actually ended up covering all of this. I think that's fine, but it shouldn't be something to be like, everyone's, none of you are covering what you're supposed to be covering. You're supposed to be covering all of this.
Hmm.
That should
Yeah,
not be
that's
the
just
process.
unreasonable.
No,
Yeah.
that should not be the process. Look through this and see if there's something that you could add, because that would be a big help. Any one of these things would,
Hmm.
would alleviate the pressure to suddenly start teaching it later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last one I have, so I had vertical skills identification, listening, reading, speaking, writing, vertical content identification, just topics they need for the DP exam. And then the last one I call vertical language concepts. And these are things where you could bring in like a research quote. It's like, language is actually really complex and built up over history. Words don't just have one meaning. There are things that I've seen my students come to me with complaints where I'll say, we're reading this text,
Hmm.
and a student will say, hey, wait, I learned that word before. It doesn't mean that. And I'll say,
Yeah.
okay, relax. Words have many
Hmm.
meanings. And they're like, no, but I still have, oh, and then I also have students that'll say, can't I just say this instead? And I'll say, it's a very conventional phrase here. You can't really swap it out. Like if an
Yeah.
English learner were to say, okay, he spilled the beans, that means he's lying. Spilled the beans, it means he revealed a secret. So could I say spilled the corn? Can I say spilled the meat? Can I say spilled the rice? And I say, it's a very conventional phrase. You can't just swap it out. Well, that kind of thing keeps coming up. And I have certain students in mind who like seem to be really resistant with
Yeah.
like, why can't I just say it this way? Why can't I
I
just say it that way?
totally know what you mean. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that they want a crystal clear thing and they worked hard to memorize that little bit and now you're saying I can't apply it here?
Right.
Like kind of a
Yeah.
feeling of like it feels like a aggravation or
Yeah.
even an attack by the
Yeah.
language on them. I've had students with especially with those who had a textbook based program prior to my teaching them. Those who are really good at that textbook program were like, wait, but what that word meant something else. I'm like,
Yeah.
deep breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like how language is acquired, I think it would be useful for students to watch like the Stephen Krashen video where he's like, you gotta get lots of exposure because I just remembered recently in college, I in my third year of college, the teacher had us get into groups and talk with each other on a topic. And I remember thinking at the time, why are we doing this? And I asked her, why are we doing this? And she goes, you guys need to practice speaking more. And I thought, okay, weird, I guess, whatever. Up until that point, we had been mostly just there was lectures about vocab and grammar and
yeah.
preparation for quizzes on Friday about vocab and a sentence. We were just memorizing discrete vocab and grammar. And the
Yeah.
homework in the integrated Chinese first edition was reading and writing, but I was treating it all as a vocabulary harvest and not
Hmm.
training in literacy. I never thought of it as training in literacy or listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So simply defining like what is your goal in this course? It's to be able to be proficient, and we're going to define proficiency for you. Here's some examples of
Hmm.
what it looks like. Those are things that would be great early on. So when they come to
Yeah.
me, they're not like, what are we doing? Even why is he speaking the language with us? So I think that
Yeah.
could be part of
The irony there. Yeah.
vertical alignment as well. It could be like
Yeah.
meta thinking about like what are our goals even. And then there's little
Yeah.
things like dictionary use. Like students should know what a good dictionary is and good ways to use it that promote learning.
Yeah.
Translation software, when to, how to use
When to
Google
use it.
Translate, when to not
Yeah.
use it, when to use it,
Yeah. Yeah.
things
How to
like that.
evaluate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, some of those concepts, I think I'll put in the show notes a link to the PowerPoint slideshow I have that has research quotes
Yeah.
that I've used in
Yeah.
the past with students where we'll read one every Friday and then kind of invite some discussion. And it's covering things like what is proficiency and also some little second language acquisition research points
Mm.
and kind of what the different progression might look like for you as a learner and
Yeah.
even some motivational things about like what's the benefit of being proficient in another language.
Yep.
And yeah,
Well, and also
so
Actful's performance
yeah,
descriptors, I think
yeah,
absolutely should be on the list where students are saying,
yes.
"Oh, I'm building up towards these bigger, like paragraph level text types, or
Hmm.
general just work related contexts or functions of like, starting with formulaic questions, but later like narrating, describing, making inferences." I'm reading off this right now. It's not from
Oh
memory,
yeah, no wonder you
but
have it so
no, no,
so
no. I
well
had a
done.
page open, yeah. But
Yeah, yeah.
I want to shout out to Actful. I think these are things to also build towards. I don't think they should be uh, strictly put into vertical alignment. Like first, we're just doing this. They can
Yeah.
inform a teacher on what's level appropriate, but you should be building towards bigger things. And if you make language simple, you can do work related text. You can do inferential text if the language is simple enough. So I wouldn't
Hmm.
strictly follow this kind of order as a curriculum,
Right.
but it's good to have in mind.
Yeah.
This has been a fun topic.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be exciting to hear how things start to happen if you want to have a follow-up sometime
Sure.
about what's happened after maybe next school year, something
Maybe a
like that.
mention. Yeah. Maybe a mention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool,
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
cool. Well, thanks for listening. I have been your co-host, Reed Riggs.
And I'm Dr. Diane Neubauer. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.